Welcome back to the deep dive. There are these fundamental questions that just seem to define what it means to be human,
Yeah,
right? Questions that stick around no matter what era we live in.
absolutely. And the German philosopher Georg Christoph Lichtenberg, he really nailed them down.
He did. Who am I? What should I do? What should I believe in? And what should I hope for? Four huge questions.
Huge. They feel like these massive intellectual mountains you have to climb. And if you try and tackle all four separately at the same time, well, it's overwhelming. You just freeze.
Yeah, exactly. So our mission today is to sort of unpack that. We've got this stack of really profound sources, thinkers like Schopenhauer, Cervantes, wisdom from the Talmud, even modern folks like Robert Greene and Dale Carnegie.
And we're aiming to pull it all together, synthesize it into something, practical, a kind of blueprint.
Right, we're not just talking theory here. We want tools you can actually use to build a life with purpose. And what's fascinating is how all these different sources seem to point towards something, well, kind of surprising.
It is surprising, is that the deepest wisdom isn't some hidden mystical secret. It's actually very practical, very achievable. And it starts with two things: action and acceptance. Radical acceptance, really.
Okay, so action and acceptance.
Yeah.
We're moving past just thinking about it. We're trying to figure out the actual steps, the architecture needed to lay the foundation and put up the frame for a life that feels meaningful, a well-lived life. All right, so let's dive into Lichtenberg's questions first. That hierarchy he set up. Today, it feels like we're absolutely obsessed with the first one. Who am I?
Oh, completely. Identity is everywhere.
Endless articles, therapy sessions, self-help books. It's all focused on defining yourself, finding your identity. But Lichtenberg, he put a different question right at the center, didn't he?
He did. What should I do? That was paramount for him.
And why? Why is the doing more important than the being, or defining the being?
Well, I think it's because we've kind of gotten things backwards in modern life. We've mixed up the means and the ends. Lichtenberg's point is that identity isn't where you start. It's something that emerges. It's a byproduct.
A byproduct of doing things.
Exactly. His insight, the really crucial bit, is this. If you know what you should do and you actually act on it, then everything else, who you are, what you believe, what you hope for, it all starts to fall into place. Identity, belief, hope. They aren't things you figure out in a vacuum by just thinking really hard. They crystallize. They become solid through sustained, focused action.
Okay, so that feeling of being stuck, of being paralyzed by endless analysis,
Yeah.
that comes from waiting for this perfectly defined identity to just arrive before you start the actual work.
That's the idea. It's like wanting the finished self-portrait hanging on the wall before you've even picked up a paintbrush or mixed any colors.
And the cost of that, the practical cost of obsessing over identity first,
Yeah.
is just stagnation. You don't move.
Precisely. You get stuck. And the sources suggest that by constantly chasing this abstract who am I, you're actually ignoring the reality of who you are right now. And who you are right now is shown by what you consistently do.
Right, like you might think you're a generous person.
Yeah, you might believe that deeply. But if your actual lived reality, your foundation, so to speak, shows you constantly avoiding chances to be charitable or always putting yourself first, well, your actions reveal a different truth.
So the belief hasn't been tested by action. It's just a wish.
It's fragile. It's not a solid identity yet. It's just a nice idea you have about yourself.
Okay, that makes sense. And this shift, focusing on action, it links directly to Tolstoy, doesn't it? He got really frustrated with the whole intellectual quest for some grand universal meaning of life.
He found it completely exhausting, yeah, impossible even. He argued that this huge universal meaning is just too big, too abstract for any single person to really grasp or live by.
But he also said the real meaning, the personal meaning, is incredibly simple. Simple enough for fools and infants to understand.
Exactly. Tolstoy felt that philosophers and religious systems had made ethical living way too complicated, almost uselessly so. He looked at ordinary people, farmers, workers who weren't caught up in abstract theories. They just focused on the next right thing to do, the next necessary ethical task right in front of them.
And he found clarity there.
Profound clarity. For Tolstoy, the simplicity of meaning was all about focusing on what you should do as an individual. Not humanity's grand destiny, but what specific task is yours right here, right now, today.
That kind of clarity feels powerful. We mentioned Terry Laughlin before, the swimming coach. His idea that good instruction should seem clear and it should make a lot of sense.
Right.
So if these really fundamental truths about living are actually simple, why do we resist them so much? We're supposed to be the smart ones, right? Why is it so hard?
That's a great question, I think. Well, maybe it's because simplicity takes away our excuses.
Hmm. How so?
Complexity gives us something to hide behind, something to study, to analyze endlessly, instead of something we have to actually do. We resist simple truths because they make us immediately accountable. If the path is clear, right there in front of you, and you don't walk it, well, whose fault is that?
It's yours.
Right. Colster is basically saying our resistance to finding meaning is often just resistance to accepting our immediate duties, the things we know we should be doing right now.
Which brings us to that fantastic piece of Chinese wisdom about the bird.
Ah, yes, the bird building its nest.
It just knows, doesn't it? Instinctively knows where to build, how to build. And in knowing that, it seems to know its whole purpose. It doesn't sit on a branch having an existential crisis about twig selection.
It really doesn't. And the contrast with us, with humans, is pretty stark. The bird just operates with this perfect efficiency based on its reality. What materials are around? What season is it? What am I built to do? It accepts its nature.
It accepts the facts. It doesn't wish it were a fish.
Exactly. It doesn't waste energy wishing things were different. Its purpose unfolds directly from engaging with its immediate, tangible responsibilities, building the nest, finding food. The suggestion is, if we just focused on building our own nests, our ethical lives, our practical responsibilities, right here and now, purpose wouldn't be something we find after a long search. It would just emerge.
Okay. So the big danger then is getting lost in the thinking, the philosophical pondering, confusing the means of inquiry with the actual end, which is living a purposeful life through action.
That's the trap, and it's the exact trap Cicero warned us about centuries ago with that saying, one should eat to live, not live to eat.
Right, we get that with food. If your whole life is just about the act of consuming, you miss the point of why you're eating to fuel your life.
And we do the exact same thing with self-improvement, don't we? Endless personality quizzes, constant navel-gazing. Look, reflection is important. It's like sustenance, but it's not the life itself.
That's the fuel, not the journey.
Precisely. Someone who just keeps asking, who am I, over and over, without also asking, okay, but what should I do? They're stuck in the consumption phase. They're confusing the philosophical inquiry with the real goal, which is purpose shown through action. The self is revealed in the doing, not before it.
All right, so component one of the blueprint, the main frame of the structure, is a clear pivot. Stop getting paralyzed by the search for some abstract identity and commit to action. Ask, what's the next right step, ethically, practically, given the reality I'm actually in?
Exactly. And that reality, the one you find yourself in, immediately brings us to the foundation needed to support that frame, which is acceptance. Because as soon as you commit to action, especially action involving others, you hit friction. It's almost inevitable. And our sources are really clear on this. Most of our emotional turmoil, our stress, comes from dealing with other people.
Oh, absolutely. We suffer because we're constantly judging them, wishing they were different, wishing they'd just think like us, act like us, react like us.
It's exhausting. We're essentially waging this constant, unwinnable battle against reality, trying to force people to be something they're not.
It's like trying to hammer square pegs into round holes just because we prefer round holes today. It's a total waste of energy.
Which is precisely why Robert Greene's idea of radical acceptance is so foundational. It's about learning to see other people almost as like phenomena, neutral facts, like comets or plants or, the weather.
Phenomena, neutral facts.
They just exist in all their variety. And that variety, Greene argues, is actually what makes life interesting, not irritating. The key application, the thing that changes everything, is to work with what they give you instead of resisting and trying to change them.
Okay, but I have to push back slightly there. Doesn't seeing people just as phenomena risk being a bit dehumanizing? How do you maintain empathy or, basic ethical responsibility if you're reducing someone difficult to just a rock or a rainy day? Did Greene or Schopenhauer talk about that?
That's a really important question. And the key is understanding this as a strategic tool, not a complete philosophy for all human interaction.
Yeah.
It's not about becoming cold or emotionally detached or morally neutral across the board.
All right.
It's about achieving dispassionate observation first. You need that clear view. See, if you're constantly angry or upset by someone's incompetence, for example, you can't think clearly enough to actually solve the problem they're creating.
Right, you're just reacting.
Exactly. So the goal of acceptance here isn't to excuse their bad behavior or say it's okay. It's to neutralize your emotional reaction to it. That gives you the mental space, the calmness to figure out the best action to take in response.
Okay, so let's take an example. A difficult boss, maybe someone whose communication is always unclear. Radical acceptance would mean accepting that unclear communication as a consistent fact of interacting with them.
Yes. Like accepting that winter involves cold weather. It's a predictable input in your environment.
Instead of getting shocked and outraged every single time they send a confusing email,
Precisely. If you're resisting that fact, fighting against it emotionally each time, you spill your metaphorical glass, right? You waste energy. But if you accept it, okay, this is how this person communicates as a neutral fact, what happens?
You change your strategy.
You change your strategy. You adapt. Maybe you build in a step to always ask clarifying questions immediately, calmly. You're now working with the phenomenon, not just wishing it would magically change. You swap useless emotional turmoil for productive strategic action.
that lines up perfectly with Schopenhauer's idea, the mineralogist approach.
It does. His advice was, when you encounter meanness or stupidity, don't let it wound you or throw you off balance.
Just treat it like finding a weird rock.
Basically, treat it as an addition to your knowledge, a new fact to be considered in studying the character of humanity.
The mineralogist isn't mad at the rock for being hard or sharp. They're just interested. Look at this property.
Exactly. They're interested in its properties, how it fits into the bigger picture. It's a radical reframe because it turns something that could cause you internal pain into just data, intellectual game.
Information instead of injury.
Right. When someone acts poorly, they're just revealing a truth about human nature, maybe their own specific nature. You gain that knowledge, and crucially, they lose the power to destabilize you emotionally.
So friction becomes information. And Green even suggests making it a kind of game, right? Solving the puzzle of people. He says the key to the calmness needed for that is realizing others are irrational. But importantly, so are you.
Yes, that's the critical pivot, the internal acceptance.
You can't really apply that clear, non-judgmental lens to everyone else if you haven't first turned it on yourself.
Absolutely not. Radical acceptance has to start at home, inside yourself. You have to be willing to ask that really uncomfortable foundational question.
Which is,
How have I been complicit in creating the conditions in my life that I say I don't want?
Oof. That's a tough one.
It really is, because it forces you to look past the story you tell yourself, maybe the victim narrative. It makes you consider how your own choices, your own patterns, maybe procrastination, maybe avoiding conflict, maybe reacting badly under pressure, have actually contributed to the financial stress or the shaky relationships or the career stagnation you're complaining about.
It forces accountability, real accountability.
Which is the absolute prerequisite for any kind of growth.
Mhm.
Green's law is quite blunt about it. The faults that irritate you most in others, they probably exist in you too, in some form.
So applying that mineralogist lens to yourself means doing an honest inventory. No judgment, just observation.
Exactly. You might recognize, okay, the way I judge my colleague for putting things off, I do that too, just with different things, like difficult phone calls. It's not about beating yourself up, it's just accepting the facts of your own current makeup before you can start remodeling.
Which ties into that warning, the one adapted from the Talmud. Woe to the people who look without understanding, who do not know their foundations.
Yes. And we often think foundations means, like, our lofty moral principles or beliefs.
Right, our ideals.
But what these sources seem to suggest is more grounded. Our foundations are our actual current lived conditions, the reality we've built brick by brick through our actions, our real habits, our genuine emotional responses, the current level of our abilities. That's the foundation.
So you can't build that solid Lichtenbergian frame of what should I do on top of a foundation riddled with self-deception or wishful thinking.
You can't, it won't hold. You have to accept the truth of where you are right now, your actual level of discipline, your real emotional triggers, your current physical limits, even if it's uncomfortable or, frankly, a bit humiliating.
But that acceptance that clears the ground.
Clears the mental clutter. It stops the energy drain of resistance. And that is what allows you to move to the next crucial step. Building capacity. Building the internal scaffolding to hold the life you want.
Okay, so we've got the foundation radical acceptance and the frame purpose through action. Now we need capacity, the internal strength, the resilience to actually hold it all together. And Brett Jones's metaphor here is just perfect.
It really is powerful. Absolute strength is the glass. Everything else is liquid inside the glass. The bigger the glass, the more of everything else you can do.
Explain that a bit more. What does the glass represent?
The glass is your capacity, your emotional strength, your mental toughness, your physical resilience, all of it combined. It's your ability to handle complexity, to deal with stress, challenges, responsibilities, without shattering or spilling over.
And life is constantly pouring more liquid in. More tasks, more demands, more friction with people.
Constantly. And if your glass is small, if your capacity is limited, you just can't hold it all. You spill over. That's where burnout comes from, feeling overwhelmed, snapping at people.
And connecting back to what we just talked about, resistance keeps the glass small.
Right.
Right. Fighting reality, refusing to accept things. That uses up the space.
It shrinks the glass dramatically. All the energy you spend wishing things were different, being angry about facts you can't change, resisting the truth of a situation or a person, that energy could have been used to expand the glass, but instead it's wasted in struggle.
It's like trying to pour a gallon of life experiences into a tiny teacup of capacity. It just makes a mess.
Exactly. But the flip side is powerful too. The moment you genuinely accept a difficult situation, even just intellectually at first, you stop wasting that energy fighting it. And boom, the glass effectively gets bigger. You've freed up internal resources.
And the sources offer a really simple, immediate tool for this, for building capacity right in the moment.
The simplest tool there is, your breath. Your breath fills you with energy anywhere and anytime you need it. It sounds almost too simple, maybe.
Maybe, but it's always there.
It's always there. It's the most fundamental way to regulate your nervous system, to bring yourself back to center, to enlarge that container in real time when you feel like you're about to spill over. Just a few conscious breaths can make a difference.
Okay, so managing this capacity, managing the glass, applies directly to our internal resources too. Which brings us to this idea of emotional economics. I love this phrase.
It's a great way to think about it, and the core maxim is striking. Make your anger so expensive that no one can afford it, and make your happiness so cheap everyone can get it for free.
Wow. Okay, unpack that. Anger should be expensive.
Think of it like managing a budget. You treat anger as a luxury item, a high-cost expenditure. Not your default response to every little annoyance. You consciously raise the internal price you have to pay to get angry.
So you reserve it.
You reserve it for things that truly matter. Genuine injustice, threats to your core values, situations that absolutely require that kind of focused, intense energy. But the day-to-day stuff, traffic jams, minor mistakes by colleagues, little irritations.
They don't meet the price threshold. Too frivolous an expense.
Exactly. You decide they're just not worth the cost in terms of your internal peace and energy.
So it's not about never being angry, but making it a deliberate, strategic choice for significant moments.
Precisely. It becomes a tool for ethical action when needed, not just a messy, uncontrolled reaction to everything. And the beauty is, this pricing frees up enormous resources.
For happiness, making happiness cheap.
Making it cheap, meaning easy to access, abundant, something you distribute freely, you choose your default state, you decide to find joy in simple things, to cultivate a baseline of contentment that isn't dependent on massive external achievements or other people behaving perfectly.
So happiness becomes this readily available everyday resource, not some rare commodity you have to hoard or only earn on special occasions.
Right. You lower the cost of entry to feeling good.
Yeah.
And this leads to a really interesting paradox that Dale Carnegie pointed out.
Which is,
In order to keep happiness, you have to share it.
huh, that seems backward, doesn't it? Usually if you give something away, you have less of it.
With material things, yes. But Carnegie saw that happiness, and actually things like honor too, they work differently. They're like renewable resources that actually grow when you distribute them. Sharing your joy, celebrating others' success, being generous with your positive energy. It somehow refills your own well.
That's fascinating. And it links personal capacity directly to how we relate to others, and maybe to this idea of honor versus reputation.
Absolutely. Lois McMaster Bujold made that great distinction.
Yeah.
Reputation is what other people know about you. Honor is what you know about yourself.
Reputation is external, fragile. Honor is internal, solid.
Exactly. Reputation can be damaged by rumors, by what others think. Honor is about your own self-knowledge, your integrity, your consistency, and living by your values, like choosing cheap happiness and expensive anger. When you operate from that place of internal honor,
You're less vulnerable,
Yeah.
less likely to be thrown off by others.
much less vulnerable. Remember Elizabeth David's line about people who take the heart out of you versus those who put it back? Someone with strong internal honor, whose self-assessment isn't dependent on external validation or fleeting moods, is far less likely to have their heart taken out. They're anchored internally. And they're actually more capable of being the person who puts heart back into others.
Okay, so this internal strength, this honor, this capacity,
Yeah.
it fundamentally changes how we should define success, doesn't it? It challenges that whole modern ideal of the rugged individual, the person who needs no one.
It completely flips the script.
Yeah.
The sources we looked at suggest a very different definition. Success is not the ability to go alone. Success is the ability to be someone who can be relied on.
Wow. That's profound. So success isn't about hyper-independence.
No. According to this view, the highest form of success is trustworthiness, interdependence, becoming a pillar. A reliable person is someone with a big glass. They can handle their own stuff, their own liquid, and still have capacity left over to support others, to be a stable force.
Because they've done the work, the acceptance, the capacity building.
They've done the internal work. They don't shatter under pressure. They actually enlarge the capacity of the people around them just by being solid.
But becoming that reliable person, building that big glass, it inevitably involves setbacks, failures. You have to test that capacity.
You absolutely do. And that's where Carnegie's perspective on failure is so crucial. He said, discouragement and failure are two of the surest stepping stones to success.
So failure isn't the end of the road.
Not at all. Failure is just truth. It's direct feedback from reality saying, okay, this approach or your current skill level isn't quite enough for this challenge right now.
And how you react to that truth is key.
It's everything. The person who resists the truth of the failure gets angry, makes excuses, denies it, they shrink their glass, they learn nothing. But the person who applies that mineralogist lens we talked about,
They accept it as a fact. Okay, this didn't work.
they accept it dispassionately, they analyze why it didn't work, like studying the properties of that rock, they extract the lesson, the wisdom from the failure, and then, crucially, they integrate that wisdom into their next plan.
Right, because accepting the failure isn't enough. You have to loop back to action. What should I do now, knowing this? Because otherwise, a goal without a plan is just a wish.
Exactly. And that plan, that newly informed strategy, has to be taken out into the world again. It needs to be tested. Which brings us beautifully to Cervantes.
Don Quixote's creator. What did he say?
His wisdom was, El que lee mucho y anda mucho, ve mucho y sabe mucho. He who reads much and walks much, sees much and knows much.
Reads much and walks much. Both are needed.
Both are essential. In our age, we are absolute masters of the reading part. We have endless information, all the philosophies, all the self-help guides, all the blueprints.
But we often skip the walking part.
We often neglect the walking. The walking is the execution. It's putting the plan into action in the real world. It's facing the friction, testing your emotional economics under real pressure, seeing if your acceptance holds up when things get tough.
So knowledge that just stays in your head that isn't tested by experience.
It's inert. It's not really valuable yet. It hasn't become wisdom. To become that reliable person, the person defined by trustworthiness, the truly successful person in this model, you have to do the walking. You have to subject your ideas, your plans, your capacity to the messy, unpredictable laboratory of life. Only the knowledge earned through both the reading and the walking truly counts. #tag outro.
Wow. Okay. So we've really constructed quite a detailed blueprint today for building a more meaningful life, pulling together threads from all these different wisdom traditions.
We have. And it starts by tackling those big Lichtenberg questions, not just by thinking harder, but by building an internal infrastructure first.
All right. So just to recap the core components, the foundation is that radical acceptance, learning to see people, and critically, ourselves, as neutral facts. Observe, understand, don't just resist. That clears the emotional decks.
Then comes the structural frame, purpose. But purpose defined by action, focusing on what should I do? Letting identity, belief, and hope emerge naturally from that focused doing, rather than trying to define them first.
Next, we need the capacity. That's expanding the glass, building our internal strength, emotional mnemel through practice like managing our breath, like that idea of emotional economics, making reliability and maybe even joy our default settings.
Making anger expensive and happiness cheap, yeah. And all of this leads to the ultimate result, which is a redefinition of success. True success isn't going it alone, it's becoming reliable, cultivating high internal honor, and discovering that paradox that happiness actually multiplies when you share it.
The way these different sources all converge on these core ideas is pretty stunning, actually.
It really is. And if the deepest truths are simple, like Tolstoy suggested, simple enough for that bird to just know how to build its nest,
Simple enough for an infant to grasp.
then maybe our biggest struggle isn't finding some incredibly complex hidden meaning. Maybe the struggle is just our own complexity, our own resistance. The meaning is there, waiting to reveal itself if we're ready to accept what's revealed.
We've done the reading. We have the blueprint, the architecture laid out right here. So perhaps the real challenge isn't discovery anymore.
Maybe the challenge is just overcoming our own resistance to the simple truths, resistance to accepting people as they are, and maybe the hardest part, resistance to accepting ourselves, our foundations, our current capacity, exactly as it is right now.
We probably know enough already. The question isn't really, who am I anymore, is it?
No, the only real question left is, are you ready to start building? What are you actually doing today, right now, that accepts the truth of your foundations and starts expanding your glass for the walking that lies ahead?
Because that is where purpose truly begins.